Thank you for coming out this morning to talk about the things that are happening in the state legislature that are suppressing voters' rights and their ability to cast and have their ballots cast. My name is Deidra Reese, and I am actually representing the Ohio Fair Elections Network as well as the Ohio Voter Protection Coalition. For hundreds of years, we have fought for the right for citizens to be able to vote. But sadly, our state legislature wants to turn the tide backwards. What we see right now is a concerted effort by Governor Kasich and our very, very hyper-partisan state legislature to undermine the democratic process and build a brick wall between voters and the ballot box. Remember back in 2011, we had House Bill 194, and it had elements such as cuts in early voting, limiting the time and hours that individuals would be able to vote even during that season, restricting the number of voting days in general, and making it more difficult for people to register to vote. What we see now is a rebuilding of House Bill 194, brick by brick. What is stated is that they are being more deliberative because they have broken it up into multiple pieces. However, we have seen bills rush through so quickly, it really should make your head spin. In the 24-hour period with House Bill 205, or Senate Bill 205, we had sponsor testimony, committee hearings, floor vote. I don't call that deliberative. Even though many of our advocates came in and testified against these bills, they still rushed it through. And on 205 in particular, which would prohibit counties from mailing unsolicited applications for absentee ballots, there's not a single individual or organization who has come out in support of that bill. Yet there are numerous organizations and individuals who have indicated that they think this is a bad bill. One of the worst things about this bill, in my opinion, is to say, even to the Secretary of State, if he wants to mail out absentee applications for ballots, he can only do it if there is an appropriation by this General Assembly. Given the fact in 2012, the applications that were mailed out to every voter were funded by federal funds, it doesn't even make sense that you would try to place that restriction. If there were an ability to have federal funds to help individuals have access to the ballot, why in heaven's name would you put barriers around the ability to make that happen? Again, it's a building of a wall. It's going brick by brick. It's not just a wholesale thing as it was in House Bill 194, but we're seeing the same thing happen all over again. When House Bill 194 was passed, citizens came together and said, this is not a good idea. In about a 6-week period of time, we were able to gather sufficient signatures to qualify for a referendum on the ballot. We thought it was going to give us the opportunity to have our voice heard, to make certain that the General Assembly understood citizens knew that these were very, very bad ideas. We met the qualifications. We should have been placed on the ballot. The Secretary of State did not move forward to actually place that referendum on the ballot, despite the fact that we had qualified based on our state constitution. Instead, what we saw was the General Assembly repeal most, but not all. They will tell you it was a complete repeal, but it really was more about a 90% repeal, and then the last part of that had to do with the last 3 days of being able to vote, and that ended up happening because of a lawsuit. We were able to succeed in that avenue for voters. But they repealed their own law then because they understood it was bad, and they understood that citizens did not like what was in the bill. Not just because, we saw a whole lot of partisanship on these things as we do today, and it's even worse now than what it was then, but because it was bad for democracy. It was just creating ways that people who were qualified voters would be disqualified or have their ballot just pushed out. Again, if we look at the language that is in Senate Bill 205, they have added the word complete and correct in terms of the ballot application itself. Now, if I turn in an application for an absentee ballot, I have filled out all of my information. One of the things that's on that statement, ward, precinct, how many of you know your ward and precinct? We've had a lot of consolidations. Things have changed. So the ability to be current on that is a little bit more difficult than what it used to be. But you know who I am. I've already established my identity. I have already established that I actually am a registered voter. There's even a line on there that says you must check which election you're voting in. Is it a primary? Is it a special? Is it a general? If I show up in, say, October, and I want to vote, how in heaven's name would you think that I'm voting for a primary? So why would that be a criteria that could disqualify me from being able to vote? Again, all we see is these barriers being put together bit by bit, brick by brick, piece by piece, just to keep people from access from the polls. And we know that more is coming. We continue to hear that they want to get rid of, we know they want to get rid of Golden Week. They're concerned that they can't establish who the voters are. It's the exact same process as anybody else. Ballots are not counted until Election Day. They're only counted if it is demonstrated that that voter is actually a qualified voter. It's an irrelevant argument, and they continue to back away from their own arguments. But one of the things that I think everybody needs to understand is that as these bills have been heard in committee, it becomes clear that the legislators don't even know the process. When we talk about Golden Week and what happens with those ballots, the sponsor of the bill had to concede he didn't understand the process. Yesterday, I was accused personally of advocating tampering with the ballot when I was actually speaking about the information form and the envelope. So to not even have an understanding that there are differences in those things only underscores my belief that these bills should not go forward. If they don't even understand what the process is currently, why the frenzy and the urgency to change what's happening? What we would like to see happen is our governor veto these bills if they come out. They probably will, because what we have seen are these bills coming out of the General Assembly, each chamber, by party line vote. So far, I personally have not heard the governor say anything, but he should. We should know, where does he stand on voters' access and rights to the ballot? And again, we're talking about qualified voters. Where does he stand? Is he willing to veto these type of bricks and building a wall that's going to keep those voters from being able to cast their ballots and have them counted? I would urge him to veto these things. If he believes in voters' rights, if he understands the history of voters' rights and how people have fought and how we allegedly believe in democracy, he should do that. How many of you, I have friends who right now are in other countries fighting, lives on the line, for the idea and the concept of democracy. And yet here in Ohio, we have a legislature that doesn't understand the tenet, the basic tenet of democracy in the United States of America, and certainly here in Ohio, is the right to vote and have your voice